Today I want to talk about using JavaScript objects. We learned about how we can create objects in JavaScript, and this class doesn't go into depth on actually having you create a lot of objects, but I want you to understand how to use objects that may have been written by someone else. To make the project a little more fun, I wrote a Space Invaders library, and a library can provide many different kinds of functionality. It's a set of objects that can be reused. So I've written that Space Invaders library in Khan Academy since we're familiar with using Khan Academy, and that allows us to do graphics. To get to the library, you can click on this link. If you download the PowerPoint, just Control-click on it, and that will bring up in Khan Academy the Space Invaders library. There's nothing on the screen now because it's just a set of objects that I've created to be used to build a Space Invaders program. Now you can see I already have 486 lines of code. So it really can be challenging to read through the code, especially on Khan Academy, because it doesn't give you different files to use. So let's look at some object-oriented documentation that will help us use the library. Here are the different objects that I have implemented in the library. I have a planet. The invaders are trying to come down to the planet to take over the planet. And I have a cannon that defends the planet. And the invaders are coming in strike forces. They're coming in patterns that are moving across the screen, slowly descending towards the planet. And that strike force is made up of these different aliens that are in the strike force. So with object-oriented programming, I'm focusing on the objects. So our objects are strike force, planet, cannon, and alien. There's another object that we want to look at, and that is the missile. The cannon fires missiles, and these missiles destroy aliens when they hit the alien. On the other side of the spectrum, the alien is dropping missiles, and when those missiles hit the cannon, it gives some damage to the cannon. So the cannon can be hit some number of times until it is finally disintegrated and can't fire anymore. But one missile goes ahead and destroys an alien. So objects are usually represented using UML, which is the Unified Modeling Language, and you really don't need to learn the Unified Modeling Language for this class. This is just introduction to programming, but it is very helpful to use this to figure out what you want to do with the program. These show all the different properties that we have on a strike force. So we've learned about properties already. Object literals have properties where you use the dot notation to access it. Arrays have properties, for example, the dot length property, where we can get that value and we can set that value using the dot notation. Well, in addition, now we're looking at these methods. We have methods on arrays. We use the push and the pop on the array to add and remove things from arrays. Well, these are just more complicated methods, and it's on the strike force. So I can add aliens to my strike force to make it a bigger strike force. I can tell the strike force to fire. I can tell the strike force to advance. And I want to find out when that strike force has been hit with missiles. So I need to detect collisions so that I can react to being hit and take out any alien that has been hit in the strike force. Now, you have actually learned all the tools that you need to write this program. You know all the loops, all the variables, all the arrays, all the objects. And yet, it's a pretty big project. You're not expected to be able to walk away from this class to write this level. However, I want you to know that you have those basic tools in your toolbox in order to do it and to understand it. So let's look at the cannon class a little more closely. So here we have a cannon, and we have a height and a width that we can set. So we could create cannons of different size. And we have a center X and a center Y, so we can define where that cannon is going to be placed. The cannons have an array of missiles that allow us to keep track of what's being shot. And we can change the cannon to any color. Remember how I mentioned cannons can have multiple hits from missiles before they're destroyed? When a missile hits a cannon, we have to keep track of our hit count. When we set the max hits, so that lets us know how many times the cannon can be hit before it disintegrates. Once the cannon is disintegrated, it becomes inactive. So this active is just a Boolean, true or false. And then we have different methods on it. We have draw, so that draws it on the screen. We have fire, which shoots out a missile. And this advanced missiles, I mean, it's kind of funny because our cannon has to keep track of all these missiles yet, even after they've left the cannon, because we need some way to go through and detect collisions. So as these missiles are shot, we continue to advance the missiles until they collide with something, and we check if it collides with something by using this detect collisions. So you don't really need to worry about how these methods work. You just have to know that these are available to use. Just like we don't know exactly how the ellipse function draws an ellipse in Canvas, we can still use that ellipse function in our program. So just think of it that way. Now let's look at the alien class. So here we have an alien, and we have a height and width, so we can change the size of our aliens. We can have a position for our alien, which is really important because we want our aliens to be moving and descending down the screen. We have phases so that our alien can change. So for example, we had that flapping bird where in one position the wings were up and another position the wings were down. Well, in this case, we have phases for our alien that gives different positions for our alien. So it looks like our alien is moving as it comes down the screen. And that move is being handled with these two different images that can be displayed. We have an active flag so that when it is active, it can fire missiles, but once there is a collision, it becomes inactive, and then we don't draw and can't fire from that alien. We can't drop missiles from that alien anymore. And so here we have our functions. We can draw it. We can detect if there's a collision with a missile, and we can fire, and we can detect landing. So for your final project, you are going to create your own Space Invaders. And I have a handout posted that helps you go through step by step, giving you suggestions on how to use the library.